They thought they had me. They thought a lifetime of secrets would stay where they'd hidden them, between the rafters of my own house, inside a story I was too trusting to question. They were sure I'd never look up, never put the pieces together, never dare to turn on the light. But the night they stood in my bedroom thinking they'd finally taken everything, the only thing shining was the truth. They believed it was the end. It wasn't. It was the moment the tide turned, and none of them knew what was coming. My name is Daniel. I'm 58 years old. I've been married 38 years. We have 2 children. At least, that's what I believed until a Tuesday evening in my kitchen when a cheap light bulb decided to give out. It happened right after dinner. My wife was rinsing plates, humming to herself, and the bulb over the sink began to flicker. 1 blink, 2, then darkness. She sighed and tossed a wet smile over her shoulder. "Danny, can you change it? The ladder's in the garage. The bulbs are in the attic, in that big box." Her voice was casual, like always. I kissed the top of her head as I walked past. I remember she smelled like lemon soap. I remember thinking how small a task it was, how ordinary. A husband fixing what's broken, like I've done my whole life. The attic was warm and still. Sawdust smell. Dry insulation. My hand found the pull chain, and the single naked bulb overhead glowed a tired yellow. I stepped over old photo albums and Christmas lights, nudged aside a suitcase we never use. The box of bulbs was half buried under a carton I didn't recognize. Heavy, taped twice across the top. I pulled at the carton to free the bulb box and the tape gave with a sticky rip. Something inside shifted. The carton tilted, then rolled, and a thin stack of papers slid out and fanned across the plywood floor like fallen leaves. 1 page skated away from the rest and landed near the dormer window where a narrow slice of sunlight pushed in through dust. If I had turned back right then, if I had just picked up the bulbs and gone downstairs, my life would still be a lie. Instead, I went to the paper in the sun. The heading was clean and official. A lab name. Dates. 2 typed names I recognized without ever wanting to see them together. It was a DNA test report. It said, "My daughter, my girl who calls me Dad, who used to dance on my shoes at weddings, was not my biological child." The report named someone else as the likely father, my best friend. I didn't feel anger first. I felt cold, like the attic's air had moved through me and replaced my blood. I read everything twice because my mind kept trying to soften the words, to find a mistake, a misprint, a reason this was anything but what it looked like. My hands shook. The paper made a quiet plastic sound when I folded it back along its crease. Downstairs, I could hear my wife humming again. The sink ran. The world was normal. I put the paper back exactly where it had landed. I closed the ripped carton. I picked up the bulbs and climbed down the narrow steps, each creak louder than it should have been. On the 3rd step from the bottom, I made a decision. She would not see anything on my face. "Got them," I said, and my voice sounded steady. I set up the ladder, unscrewed the dead bulb, and slid in the new one. The light came back with a click and a soft bloom, washing the sink, the dishes, my wife's hands. She smiled. "Thank you, honey." I smiled back. I told her I'd take out the trash. I tied the bag. I breathed like a man who had not just touched the edge of a cliff in his own house. People imagine betrayal as a loud thing. Plates thrown, doors slammed. Maybe it is, for some. Mine arrived with warm lemon soap and a flicker in a kitchen. Mine asked, politely, for a replacement bulb. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't ask how long. I didn't ask why. I didn't even ask whose idea it was to hide the report up there. I finished the dishes with her, watched a little TV, kissed her goodnight. I lay awake and counted the thud of my heart until the numbers meant nothing. And while the house slept, I planned. In the morning, I went back to the attic before work, telling her I needed to find the camping lantern for the garage. I brought a small flashlight and my reading glasses, and I took my time with the 'carton. It was heavier than I'd thought. Inside were folders, their edges curled from years of being moved around. Receipts, envelopes, a ribbon-tied bundle of letters that smelled like old perfume. I didn't read them yet. Not there. Not that morning. I slipped my phone from my pocket and photographed the DNA report, slow and steady, corners included, lab name crisp, date clear. Then I photographed the outside of the carton and how it had sat among the other boxes. I put everything back like I'd never been there. At work, numbers blurred on my computer screen. I thought about my daughter's first day of kindergarten, how she'd cried when I left and how I'd waited in the parking lot until recess just to make sure she was laughing again. I thought about my son's broken arm and how I sat on that ER floor reading jokes from a kid's magazine because the pain made him green. I thought about the man who'd stood beside me at both their births, the man who used my grill and called me brother and cried when his own father died. My best friend. My mind kept trying to push him out of the picture and he kept stepping back in, smiling like he always did, patting my back at barbecues. When my wife texted me a grocery list around noon, I answered with a thumbs up. She asked about my day. I said busy. I typed those 4 letters with a hand that didn't feel like mine. That evening, while she ran to the pharmacy for vitamins, I went upstairs again. I had 20 minutes. I opened the carton and this time I read. The letters were not innocent. They were not young and stupid. They were clear and old and bold. They began years ago, before we hit our 5th anniversary, and they never really stopped. There were hotel confirmations tucked between them. A birthday card he'd written her that made my teeth grind. Things I won't repeat here, not because I can't, but because I won't give those words a home in my mouth. I didn't cry. I wish I had. I just felt the house shift under me, like a boat when the anchor lifts. I took photos of the envelopes, dates, postmarks, return addresses. I took photos of the hotel receipts. I did it all quickly and carefully the way I fix leaky pipes and loose fence posts. Measure twice, cut once. When she came back, I was in the garage rearranging a shelf, nothing to see. She kissed my cheek. I asked about her vitamins. She said they were out of stock. She talked about a show her sister recommended. I listened like a man who didn't know his life had split into 2 clean halves. Before the bulb, after the bulb. That night, I opened our family phone plan on my laptop under the excuse of checking data over ages. I'd never cared much before. Now, I looked at times and towers and pings. Patterns rose up like footprints on wet sand. Lunchtime gaps. Late afternoon detours. The same address repeating. Not all at once. Not enough to accuse, but enough to feel the shape of the truth. I made one promise to myself before I slept. I would not shout, I would not break, and I would not guess. I would know. The next weekend, I took my daughter to brunch. We laughed about the bad coffee and the waitress who called everyone "un." I looked at her and saw nothing but my kid, the one who calls when her car sounds funny, who still texts me every Sunday night to ask how my team is doing. Somewhere, a man who is not me gave her half her face. He has never given her anything else. I held both facts at the same time and felt them cut me and make me stronger. I did not tell her yet. Truth needs to be sturdy before it carries that much weight. It needs to be tested. So I tested it. Quietly. I wrote down lab names. I searched for retesting options. I priced things I never thought I'd buy. I carried on like nothing was wrong, because by then I understood something. This wasn't a single bad night, a single mistake. This was a story built board by board across decades, nailed into the beams over my head, confident it would hold. A week after the bulb, my wife asked if I could pick up a package at the post office on my way home. She was in a good mood, singing along to the radio while she made dinner, moving around the kitchen like someone who believed the floor was solid. I said sure. I kissed her temple. My hands were steady. My heart was not. On the top shelf of our hall closet, I kept an old metal cash box with passports and spare keys. That night, while she showered, I placed a small flash drive beside them and locked the box. The drive held photos of every page that mattered. The truth had a backup now. The truth had a home that wasn't made of cardboard and tape. People say you know the exact second your life changes. I don't think that's true. I think you recognize it later when you go back over the steps. Mine was a light bulb, a sunbeam, and a piece of paper that didn't care who it hurt. It didn't explain itself. It didn't apologize. It just sat there and told the truth in black and white, the way truth does when it's finally tired of being quiet. They thought they were careful. They thought I would never climb high enough to see them. They thought the man I am, the man who fixes what breaks and takes out the trash and kisses his wife in the kitchen, would be too gentle to look under the lid. Maybe, for a long time, they were right. But I had looked now, and once you see, you can't unsee. I went to bed early, kissed her forehead, said I was tired. I stared at the ceiling and listened to the house breathe. Somewhere above us a box waited, thinking it was safe. I closed my eyes and saw that page in the sun. I didn't know exactly how I would do it yet. I only knew this. The next time I turned on a light in this house, it wouldn't be a bulb. It would be the truth. They thought the hardest part was getting me not to look up. They never planned for what would happen after I did. Truth hates a spotlight, but it also hates being boxed up. Once I touched it, I couldn't put it back. I didn't roar. I didn't throw anything. I did something worse. I started counting. The morning after that attic sunbeam, I woke to coffee and a kiss on the cheek, the kind of ordinary that keeps a lie alive. I brushed my teeth and smiled at the mirror to see if anything on my face had changed. It hadn't. Good. I needed the same face. I needed the same voice. I needed to be the man she thought she knew for just a little longer, long enough to get the truth to stand up on. I said spaghetti because I didn't want the smell of ginger to remind me of the first time my best friend came over and stayed until midnight, telling stories at our dining table, chopsticks clacking, my wife laughing too hard at a joke that wasn't that funny. Spaghetti is safer. It tastes like Thursdays and leftovers. When she went upstairs to call her sister, I went out to the garage and opened the big plastic bin where I keep old tax returns. I added a small fireproof pouch I'd bought that afternoon. Inside it, a thumb drive and another thumb drive and another, each with a copy of the photos from the attic. One would stay in the garage. One would go in my desk at work. One would sit inside the old metal cash box with the passports. If a lie could survive 38 years, then so could I with 3 backups. I didn't sleep much that week. After she drifted off, I'd lie there in the dark and think about the neatness of that lab report, the way it didn't argue, didn't raise its voice, just said what was true. It made me wonder what else in my house spoke that way if I was quiet enough to hear it. On Wednesday, I lost my phone charger so I could use hers in the kitchen. It was a ridiculous little plan, but it gave me a reason to handle her phone with permission. While it charged, I noted the exact make and model, the iOS version, the backup settings. We share a cloud account for family photos, separate accounts for everything else. She uses Face ID and a passcode I didn't know. Good. I didn't try to guess. I wasn't going to become a thief in my own house. I would use the doors that were open. The next day, I took a sick day from work and called a lawyer. I picked the name from a colleague's recommendation months ago when he went through something rough. I told the receptionist it wasn't urgent, but it wasn't nothing. She squeezed me in for the following afternoon. In the hours before that appointment, I went back to the attic. I wore nitrile gloves I use for the lawnmower oil change. Ridiculous, maybe, but it made me slow down. I set my phone to airplane mode, not because anyone could see me, but because I needed to feel unplugged from everything except the pages in front of me. The carton had 3 folders inside: blue, manila, red. The red one held the letters. I didn't read them, start to finish. I scanned the tops for dates and the bottoms for signatures and photographed every envelope, front and back. There were postmarks from cities I could place on a map of our marriage. Chicago, the week our son had the flu. Phoenix, the month my father was in the hospital. A local one dated 3 days after our 20th anniversary dinner, the one where she cried when the waiter brought out the tiny cake with the gold candle. I had thought those were good tears. Between the letters were hotel confirmations tucked like receipts stuck to a calendar. 2 different chains, consistent days, lunchtimes, late afternoons. A room with 2 windows that heard the rain. I didn't let myself picture any of it. The mind is cruel like that. If you let it, it will build a movie you can never unsee. I took the pictures, noted the dates, put the papers back in order. When I put the ribbon back around the letters, I tied it the same way it had been tied. Knot first, then a hard tug left. People think hiding a secret is throwing it in a river. It's not. It's placing it in a drawer and trusting no one will notice you opened it. At 3:15 the next day, I walked into a small office with a humming air conditioner and a fern by the window and met the woman who would be my lawyer. Her name was Alvarez. She shook my hand like she'd done it before and told me to sit. I put the spiral notebook on her desk and the flash drive beside it and said the sentence I'd been practicing in the car. I don't want to burn down my life with a guess. I want to turn on the lights with facts. We went through everything. Slowly. She didn't make noises or say, "Oh my God," or widen her eyes at the worst parts. She asked for the timeline. She asked how long I'd had the report, whether I'd confronted anyone, whether I'd moved money or removed access or made threats. I hadn't. "Good," she said. Then she gave me rules. Do not confront her yet. Do not touch his car. Do not send him a text you'll regret. Don't be a hero. Heroes lose assets. We're going to be boring instead. Document, verify, and protect. She explained the basics for our state. What counted, what didn't, where fault mattered, where it didn't. I wrote it down. When she talked about money, I took an extra breath. We have a house that needs a new roof. We have retirement accounts I fed like a stubborn plant. We have a college loan we're almost done with. We are not rich. We are not poor. We are what happens when 2 people show up to work for 4 decades and trust each other to be straight. 2 tracks, she said, tapping the notebook with a capped pen. Track 1, personal, your kids, your heart, your everyday. Track 2, legal, evidence, copies, who knew what and when. I handle track 2. You move carefully on track 1 so you don't make track 2 harder. What about the report? I asked. The lab said they need a court order. That's fine. I'll draft a letter first and see if they'll provide a certified copy with a notarized affidavit. If not, we'll compel it. Either way, what you photographed is powerful as a lead, not as a finish. We'll make it official. What about my daughter? I asked, and my voice cracked on that word the way a dry branch does under a boot. She didn't choose any of this. That's track 1, Ms. Alvarez said, softer. We don't blow her world up until the floor is solid. And when we do, you don't knock out the beams that support her. That means no shouting matches, no public scenes, no humiliating her mother in front of her. You'll have the chance to be dignified. Take it. I nodded and looked at the fern because it was easier than looking at the part of my life that felt like a smoked-out room. She slid a short list across to me. Freeze any joint lines of credit if you can. Inventory assets. Photograph serial numbers of tools, jewelry, electronics. Change your email password. Back up your personal files. And, her pen paused, install a security system if you don't have one. Common areas only, she said. Front door, back door, living room. She looked at me hard until I nodded. You do not record people in a bedroom. You're not making a movie. You're building a case. Keep it legal, keep it moral. Truth is strong enough. I left with a folder and a headache and the feeling you get after a storm passes, but the air still smells like rain. In the parking lot, I called the credit card company and asked for text alerts on any purchase over $50. I walked into a hardware store and bought a motion sensor for the back door and a bell for the front that sends a ping to my phone. I don't know if it made me safer, but it gave my hands something to do. That night, my wife asked if I wanted to go to a movie on Saturday. Her eyes were bright, too bright, like someone trying to sell a story they haven't fully rehearsed. I said yes. I watched her stir a pot and text at the same time. The little smile that comes when you think you're clever and unobserved. Maybe she was texting a friend about showtimes. Maybe she wasn't. The old me would have asked. The new me took a picture in my head. The time, the tilt of her mouth, the way her thumb moved faster for one person than it does for others. After dinner, I sat with my son on the porch. He told me about a client at work who changes his mind every day and how exhausting that is. I listened, really listened. He looked at me and paused. "You okay, Dad? You're quiet." "I'm good," I said, and meant it in a strange way. Not happy, not fine. Good, like a man holding a level to a wall and seeing where the bubble really is for the first time. "Just thinking about fixing that back fence this weekend." "I can help," he said, and I tucked the offer into the warm part of my chest where I keep the simple, honest things. Coffee, Sunday games, the way your kid still says I can help. When the house was dark, I opened my laptop and pulled up our phone plan again. Not to snoop, to see patterns. I wrote down call lengths, the clusters, the lunch hour pings that matched the hotel receipts from the red folder. It didn't give me everything. It gave me enough to know I wasn't holding a single wrong page. I was holding a book. On Friday, a package arrived by courier, addressed to me from Ms. Alvarez's office. Inside was a letter she'd sent to the lab, formal and direct, along with a timeline she'd sketched from the dates I'd given her. On a yellow sticky note, she'd written, "Keep your head, verify again, don't tip your hand." I put the timeline on my desk and stared at the gaps. There were places that needed filling, places where memory and paper didn't meet. I thought of my daughter again, the curve of her handwriting when she was 8, the way she signs her name now with a hard press on the last letter. I thought of my best friend's dumb laugh and the way he always added salt before tasting. I thought of my wife as a girl at 20 and then as a woman at 58, and I tried to put the two pictures together until they made one face I could understand. On Saturday morning, while my wife took a long shower before our movie, I made pancakes. I set her plate the way she likes it, syrup in a little ramekin, not poured, strawberries in the corner. Her phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't touch it. I looked at the screen. A first name only, common, nothing to prove anything, but my stomach tightened anyway. She came down in a white blouse I've always liked and kissed me on the mouth like we were just us. I kissed her back and tasted the toothpaste and the years and something I couldn't name, something like metal. We sat in the theater that afternoon in the cool dark. She reached for my hand during a sad scene, and for a second I thought about all the times we'd done that and how I'd never once wondered who else she held like this. The credits rolled. People stood. Popcorn crunched underfoot. In the parking lot, my phone buzzed. Ms. Alvarez again. Lab acknowledged receipt. Expect response Monday. We proceed either way. My wife asked if I wanted ice cream. I said yes. We ate in the car with the windows down. Somewhere a kid laughed, high and bright. For a whole minute I let the sound wash me clean. On Sunday night, I sat at the kitchen table and opened the spiral notebook. At the top of a fresh page I wrote in block letters, "Next steps." Under it, 3 bullets. Confirm report via certified copy. Build full timeline with letters, receipts, phone patterns. Verify again with new data I control. I didn't write the last line out loud because it felt too big to share with paper yet, but I felt it in my bones. I would ask for new tests, the kind that take doubt and grind it down to dust. Not today, not tomorrow, soon. And when I did, I would do it gently, without blame, because the person most hurt by that truth is not me. I closed the notebook and looked up at the kitchen light, the new bulb glowing steady over a clean sink. The house was quiet. The attic was quiet. My wife was upstairs, humming. Somewhere, my best friend was living his day like he always did, believing I would never climb far enough to reach him. They believed they'd built something I couldn't take apart, but I wasn't going to smash it. I was going to unscrew it, one careful turn at a time, until the whole thing came down in my hands with a soft, undeniable click. They thought I'd panic and tip my hand. Instead, I did the one thing that ruins good liars. I went and got a second truth to sit beside the first, because if one paper could change my life, two could change the ending. I started with brunch. My kids loved the greasy spoon down on Harper, the one with chipped mugs and a waitress who calls everybody Harn. I invited both of them, my son, easy smile, sleeves rolled, and my daughter, late as always, hair up, sunglasses on her head like a crown. On the way there, I rehearsed 100 openings and threw them all away. You can't walk into your child's morning and drop a bomb. You can, however, bring a small, harmless idea and let the truth grow toward it. "Humor your old man," I said when the coffee came. "I'm doing one of those ancestry and health kits. Might be fun to see where our people came from, check if we've got any boring risks I should nag you about." I made a face when I said nag. They laughed. I didn't lie. I just didn't take out the whole map at once. "Sure," my son said, easy as a nod. My daughter squinted at me, measuring, then shrugged. "Okay, Dad. But if it says I'm predisposed to dislike raisins, I want it in writing." The waitress laughed. I laughed too and wrote raisins on a napkin like a man making a grocery list for a soft future. I didn't mail the kits to some shadow address. I followed the rules. Names correct. Consent forms signed. I sent them to 2 separate labs, not because I wanted drama, but because I wanted the ground to stop moving. When the boxes were gone, I stared at the tracking numbers like they were lifelines. Maybe they were. While the tests went out, I worked the timeline. Ms. Alvarez had drawn the scaffolding. I filled it. I cleared the dining table and laid out a calendar that stretched from the year before our 5th anniversary to the present. I wrote anniversaries, birthdays, broken bones, promotions, vacations. Then I slid the letters and receipts into place. Postmarks lined up with business trips, hotel confirmations with book club nights I'd never questioned. I didn't have to guess the early days. The letters bragged for me. I used sticky notes where paper ran out, added arrows where the pattern sharpened. One column remained clean. The months my wife had sat by my mother's bed while she faded. Even lies can't hold every room at once. The mail brought the first lab email on a Tuesday afternoon. "Your results are ready." My hands went cold like someone had opened the old attic window again. I closed my office door and sat. The page loaded. 2 lines, one steady, one ending in a word I had already read once, alone in the dust. Excluded. I didn't move. I read it again, slower. My son, biological father, match. My daughter, not a match. No drama in the font. No exclamation points. Just the textureless finality of science when it has nothing to argue with. The second lab came 2 days later and said the same thing. Different layout, same weight. I put both reports in the fireproof pouch with the flash drive. I didn't cry then either. I put my head on my desk for a full minute and breathed until my ribs stopped trembling. Then I wrote a sentence at the top of a fresh page in the notebook. "She is still my child." No lab can take years out of a kitchen. If you're wondering how a man goes from a screen full of numbers to making dinner like nothing happened, the answer is, you cook because the body remembers what the mind can't hold. I chopped onions and my eyes burned for a normal reason. I salted the pasta water like the world was steady. When she came in humming, I noticed a new ring on the chain she wears. Small, plain, gold. A gift? A replacement? A memory? The kind of question that used to be harmless now sat heavy, unasked between us. The next morning, I installed a doorbell camera and 2 small motion sensors that ping my phone when the front or back door opens. Common areas only, just like Ms. Alvarez said. Legal, boring, necessary. I spent an hour on the living room floor with cables and zip ties, cursing softly at a stubborn HDMI port like any Saturday handyman. I set the smart TV to a guest profile, mirrored a clean, empty folder from a separate drive, and tested it twice. This wasn't the plan yet. This was a shelf bracket on a wall that might one day hold a weight. On Sunday, I exported my phone backups to the encrypted drive and made a copy for the cache box. I backed up the family computer too, the way I should have been doing all along. Domestic maintenance, I told myself. A man does what needs doing. And the house went on. My wife bought a scented candle she said smelled like clean cotton. My son came by with a bent fence picket and a six-pack. My daughter texted a picture of a stray cat sleeping by her tire. Life kept throwing small human details into the air like confetti, and I stood under it holding a dustpan and a folder full of the heaviest paper I've ever touched. You might think anger would be the thing to keep me moving. It wasn't. It was duty. To my daughter, to my son, even to a version of my wife I wanted to remember without poison. If I burned it all down, what did they stand on? So I kept the matchbook closed and I measured again. The first crack in the near present came through kindness. My wife put a sticky note on the fridge. Sheets to cleaners Tuesday morning. Nothing dramatic, domestic, but under it, on the counter, she had left a handwritten list that wasn't meant for me. Things to remember while I was at the conference next week. She'd never needed a list for my trips. I read it like a stranger decoding a postcard. New bulbs for the bedside lamps. Candles, vanilla, not lavender. Wine, Merlot from that place on Cedar. Call S about timing. S could be her sister. S could be anyone. S could be exactly who I thought it was. There was no proof on paper, only the shape of a plan bold enough to write in ink in my kitchen. Later that day, the doorbell camera pinged while I was in the garage. The florist from downtown stood on my porch with a narrow box and a polite smile. I watched my wife sign the pad with a flourish. She carried the box to our room without a word and came back down 10 minutes later, empty-handed, humming off-key. I didn't follow. They were flowers. Flowers are innocent. So is a dress laid out for cleaning. So is a calendar entry that reads, plant watering, when I don't own a single living plant in our bedroom. If you think it sounds like grasping, remember I had the old map and the new one now. The past was a highway I could trace with dates and receipts. The present had just enough tire marks to tell me which lane she was drifting into. That evening, she leaned in the doorway while I watched a game and asked, in that casual voice lovers use when they're sure, "You still leaving early Tuesday? I'll sleep in. Don't wake me. Take the blue suitcase. The zipper's better." "Yeah," I said, eyes on the screen. "Blue one. Back Wednesday." I took a sip of water to hide the swallow that wanted to climb out of my throat and sit on the coffee table. Monday morning, the second lab's hard copy envelope arrived certified, just like Ms. Alvarez had said it might. I signed with a hand that didn't shake and slid the pages into the fireproof pouch. An hour later, my phone buzzed again, an email to our old shared household account we never stopped using for deliveries. It was a reminder from that hotel chain 2 neighborhoods over. "We look forward to your stay, Tuesday, 4 p.m. Her name wasn't on it. No names were. Just a confirmation code I recognized from the red folder years back. The same pattern, like an old tune hummed under a new melody. You could argue it was coincidence. Coincidence doesn't buy the same wine, the same candle, and book the same chain on the day your husband is out of town. Coincidence doesn't write lists with only one initial. I went for a walk. I didn't take my phone. I let the air cool my face, and the sound of kids shooting hoops on the cul-de-sac knocked the noise out of my head. By the time I reached the corner, I knew 2 things. I would not catch them in the act, and I would not let the act define the truth. I wasn't going to make a movie. I was going to make a room full of light and let the pages speak. Back home, I called Ms. Alvarez and told her I needed her Tuesday evening. "Bring whatever you need to do this clean," I said. She didn't ask for theater. She hates theater. She asked for times and addresses and who should be there. "Your son," she said carefully. "He's an adult. He can decide. But this is a scalpel, Daniel, not an axe." After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote 2 letters. The first was to my daughter. I didn't write the words, "not mine." I wrote the words, "always mine." I told her I loved her in the plain voice I used when she was 5 and afraid of thunder. I folded it and put it in the cash box to give her when the floor was ready. The second was to myself. It had one sentence: "You are not here to humiliate. You are here to end the lie." I tested the smart TV once more. Folder mirrored, empty screen, remote tucked where only my hand would find it. I checked the doorbell camera feed and the motion pings and the bell on the front door. I put the certified copies of the lab results in a locked drawer in the hall, next to a printed report of the hotel email and a neat stack of the attic photos. I made a pot of coffee at 9 p.m. and washed the pot at 9:15, because Tuesday would be long and I needed my hands to remember the difference between shaking and doing. That night, my wife slid into bed smelling like the clean cotton candles she'd bought. She kissed my shoulder. "Don't forget your charger," she murmured. "You always do." I told her I wouldn't. I rolled to my side and looked at the ceiling. The new bulb burned softly in the hallway, a thin line of light under the door. They thought I'd leave the house dark for them. They thought my absence was a gift they could unwrap between clean sheets. They had no idea the gift I was bringing home wasn't absence at all. It was witnesses. It was paper. It was the kind of light that doesn't flicker when you breathe. They thought absence was the key. They planned around a suitcase, a supposed conference, a dark house they could color in however they wanted. What they didn't plan for was that I could be gone and present at the same time, quiet as a shadow, loud as paper. I left Tuesday morning before sunrise with the blue suitcase she recommended, the one with the better zipper. I kissed her forehead and said I'd call when I got to the hotel. At the end of our street, I turned left instead of right, circled 3 blocks, and checked into a cheap motel by the highway under a name my driver's license still recognizes. I stayed long enough to put a toothbrush by the sink, take a time-stamped photo, and send her a text. "Here safe, long day ahead." She sent back a heart and a "sleep well." It was 9:12 a.m. By noon, I was in my own kitchen again with the blinds half closed. The motion sensors were live, the doorbell camera feed clear on my phone, the smart TV in the bedroom connected to the empty guest folder I'd made. In the hall drawer, I stacked what mattered: certified lab results, printed phone records, the hotel email, photos of the attic letters. On top, I set the old DNA page, the one that first landed in the sun. It would not be lonely tonight. At 3:40, I met my son 2 streets over and told him only what he needed. "I'm ending a lie. I need you steady. No shouting, no touching anyone. We stick to facts." He looked at me for a long second, jaw tight, and then nodded. "I'm with you, Dad." I told him there would be a neutral witness, Ms. Jackson from next door who's known us for 20 years and has a spine like a church beam, and a man from a service company whose job, by law, is to hand people paper when it's time. "We're not making a scene," I said. "We're making it official." He swallowed hard and said, "Okay." By 5, Ms. Jackson sat at the edge of our living room couch with a notebook on her knees, the way she does at community meetings. "If voices rise," she said in that steady neighbor voice, "I'll remind everyone what time it is and who can hear." The process server, polite, neat, eyes like a filing cabinet, stood near the stairs with 2 envelopes tucked in a leather folio. I kept my breathing slow. This wasn't a raid, it was a reveal. At 5:32, the doorbell chimed and my phone lit up with the porch camera. A florist again, another narrow box. My wife opened the door with a small smile like a cat about to set down a mouse. She signed, took the box upstairs, and came down empty-handed. The house smelled faintly of vanilla and clean cotton. They were setting a stage. At 6:10, she left for a quick errand. At 6:18, the front door pinged. I stayed in the hall alcove out of sight as she carried in a Merlot from the place on Cedar and the white bag from the dry cleaner. She didn't call out for me. She didn't move like a woman expecting to be overheard. She went upstairs humming. 10 minutes later, she came down in a soft blouse I recognized from the better days. She checked her hair in the hall mirror. She didn't see the reflection of Miss Jackson in the living room. She didn't hear my son's breath in the corner or the server's shoes on the mat. She took the Merlot, 2 glasses, a corkscrew, and the candle up the stairs. The bedroom door clicked shut. My watch said 6:37 when the second ping hit. Back door, motion. My best friend. He didn't use the front, the way people do when they want to be seen. He used the path along the hedges where our feet have worn the grass thin from years of cookouts and easy Sundays. He let himself in with the key we used to keep for emergencies, the one I should have taken back a decade ago, but didn't because I never thought I'd have to. He walked through my kitchen like a man in his own kitchen. He smelled the candle, smiled to himself, and took the stairs slow, pausing at the top as if to savor the last second before whatever he believed was the prize. I looked at my son. He shook his head once just to keep the lid on his chest. Miss Jackson's pen scratched a calm line across her paper. The process server adjusted his tie. A soft laugh carried through the ceiling, the murmurs of 2 people who think the house is empty. A door clicked. Footsteps across carpet. My phone buzzed. Miss Alvarez. I'm outside. I had asked her to wait in her car a few houses down. Not to speak. To be a witness if something collided with the plan. I texted back, stand by. Ready? I whispered to the living room. My son nodded. Miss Jackson closed her notebook. The process server tapped the envelopes twice against his folio, a habit that sounded like a gavel to me. We went up together. The climb felt like walking into weather. At the top, I stood 3 steps from the bedroom door and breathed once. I knocked, just a knuckle on wood. The talking stopped. The bed creaked. The latch moved. The door opened half a hand's width. My wife stood there with her hair a little loose and her blouse still buttoned. Behind her, my best friend was mid-sit on the edge of the bed. Shoes off, socks still on, face turning from charm to caution to a shape I'd never seen on him. I could smell the Merlot. I could see the candle, small and white. On the nightstand, the TV remote lay where I'd left it. No one spoke. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move past the door jamb. I won't touch either of you, I said. I won't film you. I won't shout. But you're going to look. I reached into the hall table's shallow drawer where I'd placed the second remote an hour before, the one paired to the smart TV's guest folder, and pressed a single button. The screen on the dresser lit a calm blue, then filled with words. Not bodies, not skin. Words, their words. A timeline view I'd made, texts, emails, hotel confirmations, a calendar entry that read, plant watering at the same hotel code as the email from yesterday. The oldest messages were blurred. The recent ones were not. The TV scrolled on its own, slow enough for eyes to keep up, too fast to pretend the mind had misread. My wife put her hand to her mouth. My best friend stood up too quickly and had to catch his balance. This is, he started. Don't, I said, still quiet. Let them speak. They watched themselves plan. They watched themselves joke. They watched words about my house and my schedule and my bed glow in a light they could not dim. I advanced the folder. The screen shifted. The hotel email, the receipts, the florist signature, a photo of the cotton-scented candle on our dresser that I had taken before I left that afternoon, time and date stamped. My son's breath hitched. Miss Jackson wrote the time in her notebook. The process server stepped forward. Ma'am, he said to my wife, voice professional as a library. Sir. He handed each of them an envelope. They stared at the papers like they were fake fire. You have been served. He explained the basic lines, petition filed, notice to appear, protective orders regarding finances and property, a request for certified records from the lab. He was done in 60 seconds. He stepped back like a man who knows his part and doesn't need extra lines. My best friend tried again. Danny, listen. Daniel, I said, and my own name steadied me. You called me brother while you wrote these. I gestured to the screen. It showed a message about Tuesday, about a bottle of Merlot and a soft candle, and, finally, a night without his keys in the bowl. The TV went quiet on a photo of a hotel room years ago, just a window and rain and the corner of a patterned bedspread, and the caption she had sent, "This one hears the rain." "I invited witnesses," I said, turning my head slightly toward the hall, "because the truth does not need to hide. Miss Jackson is here because she's watched this street for 20 years and knows our house by heart. My son is here because I won't let him learn this from rumors. Mr. Carter is here because paper deserves to be handed by someone whose job is paper, not by a husband with shaking hands." My wife found her voice. "How could you?" she said, as if I had trespassed. "How could you bring people into our bedroom?" I kept my eyes on her face. "I didn't bring anyone into our bedroom," I said, and stepped back half a foot to show the line I had drawn with my body. "And I didn't record you in here. The only thing this room is holding tonight is your own words." Her gaze flicked to the dresser, to the TV, to the photo of rain. She shook her head once, tiny, as if to rattle something loose. "We can talk," she said, voice searching for the soft power she'd always used. "Send them away, and we can talk." "We will talk," I said, "in the living room, with the door open, with respect, with facts. This is my house. It is still my house, and I will not have more lies here." My best friend took 3 fast steps that put him too close to my son. My son didn't flinch or move aside. He didn't puff up. He just said, "No," in the voice he used as a kid when some older boy tried to take his ball. It froze the room for half a second. "Back up," Ms. Jackson said. Not loud, not mean. It sounded like Sunday school and city council and every time an adult told a child to do the right thing. He backed up. I pressed the remote again. The TV changed to one image. A scanned document with a lab letterhead and my daughter's name near the top. I had blurred the genetic markers and the barcodes. Only 2 crisp words remained near the center. The scientific phrase that means "not the father." My wife made a small sound I have no name for. My best friend went pale where his tan usually sits. My son's hand found the doorframe behind him like he needed the wood to remind him the world was real. I raised my palm before anyone could speak. "Do not say her name," I said. "Do not say a single word about her in this room tonight. She is not a scandal. She is my child, and she will hear the truth when the floor is ready to hold her, not in a hallway with a candle burning." The quiet in that moment was a living thing. The smart TV hummed. The Merlot breathed in its bottle. Somewhere on the street, a car door shut and a dog barked twice like the world had not changed shape. Ms. Jackson stood. "Let's all go downstairs," she said, making it simple. "Open door, daylight talk." We went down in a slow line. My son, last, broad in the stairwell the way I had once been when he was small, and I blocked the basement when it flooded. In the living room, I took the chair by the window, left the couch to them, gave Ms. Jackson the other chair, nodded to the process server who stood by the mantel as if it were his podium. I didn't ask questions I didn't need answers to. I didn't ask why 100 times. I didn't hand them the rope of my pain and beg them to pull. I did the boring, patient thing Ms. Alvarez told me would matter later. I read a short statement I'd written on a 3x5 card so my voice would not wander. "I have certified results from 2 labs and a historical report I found in our attic," I said. "I have dates, messages, and receipts that show a long relationship between you two. Tonight is not about punishment. Tonight is about notice. I am separating. The locks will change in the morning. Finances are being safeguarded. You will collect your personal items with a third party present by appointment. There will be counseling available for the kids. We will conduct ourselves with respect, or we will conduct ourselves with a judge." My wife's eyes flashed. She started to reach for my hand out of habit and stopped in the space between us like a hand remembers heat before the mind does. "You don't have to do this here," she said, softer now. "We can fix." "No," I said. We will not fix a lie by giving it a quieter room. My best friend tried a new angle, the one where he becomes the victim of his own urges and 1,000 tiny excuses. I held up a second card and read again, because paper kept me from losing the simple road. Do not explain. Do not minimize. Do not compare. You will speak to your attorney. He sat back as if the couch had pushed him. The candle's scent from upstairs followed us down like a ghost that had lost its timing. We ended without shouting, without throwing anything, without the part where people slam doors and break frames and give the neighbors a story to chew. Ms. Jackson wrote the time again. The process server noted that the papers had been delivered and acknowledged. My son walked to the front door and opened it, a gentle order in the shape of good manners. Before they left, my wife looked up at the stairs and then at me, and for a second I saw the 20-year-old girl I married right under the 58-year-old woman who had stood in that doorway barefoot with a wine glass. "What about?" she began. "Track 1, I said, the way Ms. Alvarez had taught me to divide the world. "Our daughter is track 1. We will hold her with care. We will not spill this on her." The door closed on the word "okay," whether she said it or I made it. It sounded the same. They went out into a night that had no more shadows for me. When the house was quiet again, my legs shook. I sat on the bottom stair and put my head in my hands, not to cry, just to rest the weight somewhere that could hold it. My son lowered himself beside me until our shoulders touched. We sat like that for a minute, two men listening to a house relearn the sound of its own stillness. "I'm proud of you," he said, voice low. "I'm proud of you," I said back, and meant it, and then we both laughed once, the kind that breaks a knot in your chest. Ms. Jackson squeezed my shoulder, the way neighbors do when they've seen enough of life to know where mercy fits. "You kept your dignity," she said. "That's how you win this part." After they left, I walked upstairs alone. The candle was still burning on the nightstand, small and white as if it could keep pretending it was just a smell. I blew it out and opened the window an inch to let the clean night in. The smart TV screen had gone to sleep, a dark mirror reflecting a bed that would be stripped in the morning and made new. On the dresser, I set the 3E5 cards and the old lab page side by side. The attic bulb had started this. A different kind of light had continued it. I laid my palm flat on the wood and felt the house under it like a heartbeat. They thought tonight would be the victory lap of a long, careful race. They didn't understand that all they'd done was bring everyone to the starting line of the truth. Tomorrow would be the race. Papers filed, accounts secured, stories told the right way. There would be more twists. People who build secret rooms always have another door to show you. But not tonight. Tonight, the plan held. The house was quiet. And for the first time since that sunbeam hit the attic floor, I believed the ending could be mine to write. They thought the worst I could do was throw them out and slam a door. They didn't account for what happens when a calm man makes a list, hands it to the law, and doesn't budge. The morning after the reveal, the house woke to a different gravity. I felt it in the boards. The lie had been evicted, but it was still circling the block, looking for a window I forgot to latch. At 8 a.m., a locksmith parked at the curb. He worked with the steady rhythm of someone who knows where endings fit. New deadbolts on every exterior door. New codes on the garage. I watched him pack up from the porch while the doorbell camera recorded the simplest truth in the world. The house belongs to the person who opens it. When he left, he shook my hand and said, "It'll feel strange for a week." He was right. The first time I turned my new key, it felt like learning to write with my other hand. At 9, Ms. Alvarez called. "You did it clean," she said. "Now keep it clean." I filed the temporary orders at 8:30. You'll get a hearing date. In the meantime, inventory and quiet. Quiet doesn't mean silence. It means speaking only where it counts. I walked room to room with my phone and took photographs. Serial numbers, jewelry, tools. I emailed copies to Ms. Alvarez and saved them to the encrypted drive. The work of protecting a life looks boring if you don't know what you're seeing. By noon, my phone started buzzing with numbers I knew by heart. I didn't answer the best friend. I didn't answer his wife either. Yes, he has one of those. She and I had long ago built a polite bridge made of barbecues and birthdays and the kind of text you send when someone's father is ill. The bridge had been quietly rotting from his side for years, and I hadn't noticed. Ms. Alvarez's rule held, "Don't be a hero. Don't be a savior. Let the facts go where they go." I let her call roll to voicemail and forwarded the audio to Ms. Alvarez without listening. I'd hear words soon enough, and I wanted them in a room with chairs and a clock. My son came at one with sandwiches and a look I recognized from the day he taught himself to change a tire. We ate at the kitchen island like two men building a dock. He asked if I wanted him to be at the house when she came for her things. I told him no, not because I didn't want him there, but because I didn't want him to have to remember the sound of his mother packing in a hurry. We scheduled a neutral party pickup with Ms. Jackson as a witness for the following afternoon. Ms. Alvarez would have a paralegal present too. Clipboard, checklists, a calm voice that knows how to say, "That stays," and "You may take that." Boundaries aren't just lines, they're people who can say, "Stop," without shaking. My daughter texted at 2:17. "You home later? Might swing by." My fingers hovered over the screen. Every muscle wanted to write, "Come now, I have to tell you something." But truth needs a floor. I texted, "Of course, but can we do Sunday? I've got workmen in and out today." She sent back a thumbs up and a heart. I stared at that heart for a full minute, then put my phone face down and breathed. At 3, I drove to my bank. I sat in a chair that made you feel small and answered the questions you answer when a marriage becomes two business partners who can't share a safe. Freeze joint line of credit. Require 2 signatures for withdrawals above a number that would have seemed dramatic last month and seemed small today. New login credentials. New security questions that had nothing to do with favorite songs or first pets. The manager slid a printed sheet across the desk. "Initial here," she said, tapping a line with a pink nail. "And here." I initialed. My hand didn't shake. At 5, I called a counselor. Not for them. For me. For my son. For my daughter, when the floor was ready. The woman on the phone didn't pretend to fix anything with a sentence. She offered times. I took Thursday at 4 for myself and asked for a list of names who work well with adult children navigating identity earthquakes. "We'll find someone good," she said. That sentence felt like someone had opened a window an inch. The pickup happened the next day with the efficiency of a fire drill. Ms. Jackson stood like a lighthouse at the foyer. The paralegal read from a list. My wife moved like a person who had just discovered how heavy a sweater can feel when you fold it under watch. She didn't look at the framed photos. She looked at the edges of the frames. She asked for small things that were small and for small things that were not. The paralegal kept the pace. Clothing, toiletries, personal jewelry, yes. Shared purchases, tools, furniture, no. Gifts from him, no. My wife's eyes flicked up at that last no, then away. She didn't argue. She took 2 suitcases and a box and left the candle on the dresser. The scent had already gone. I watched the door close and felt nothing noble, only empty and steady, like a tide turning on a beach no one is standing on. The calls kept coming. My best friend left a message that started as an apology and turned into a performance. I didn't press play. Ms. Alvarez forwarded me a 2-sentence reply she'd sent to his attorney. All communications through counsel. Client has documented timeline and certified results. The phrase looked small in my inbox and glowed like a fuse. On Saturday night, the neighborhood had the kind of quiet you notice. Ms. Jackson knocked with a Tupperware of something warm and unremarkable in the best way. We ate at the table and talked about potholes in the school board. When she stood to leave, she touched the back of a chair and said, "You told the truth without breaking the windows." I nodded. "Windows are expensive," I said, and we both laughed the short, tired laugh people laugh when they've seen a week like this one. Sunday came, and with it my daughter. She wore the kind of casual that means you care. Clean jeans, a soft sweater, hair down, lip balm. She looked around the living room and noticed nothing was broken. Good. She hugged me. I hugged her back with my whole chest. We sat, not on the couch where the paralegal had perched, but on the floor with our backs against the couch like we used to when we built Lego cities and listened to rain. "I saw Mom's car at Aunt Serena's," she said, voice light but watching. "Everything okay?" I had rehearsed 100 openings and threw them all away again. I told her the truth I could hold without dropping her. "Your mother and I are separating." I said the reason without details. I found things I can't unknow. I said the sentence that mattered most. This is not your fault, and it is not your job to fix it. Her eyes filled the way eyes fill when they're deciding whether to let go or hold the line. She let go a little. I didn't mention labs or initials or timelines. I said, "We will tell you more, carefully, when we have a room that can hold it." She nodded and looked at her hands. "Okay," she said, and the okay sounded like a wooden bridge flexing and holding. We ate lunch. We laughed about the cat. She left with leftovers and a hug that lingered. When the door closed, my legs gave a little, and I put my hands on my knees like a man who has just carried a heavy box down the stairs and needs one breath before the next. Monday was paperwork. Ms. Alvarez sent drafts, temporary support proposals, a proposed parenting plan for holidays and family events, even though our kids are grown, because families still need maps. I approved what felt fair and asked to change what felt like punishment dressed as fairness. "No fire," I wrote in the margin of one paragraph. She adjusted a line. "A good lawyer is a translator with a spine." Tuesday was mediation orientation, neutral office, coffee that tastes like it came out of a bottle, a white noise machine in the hallway like you hear in doctors' offices for privacy. I sat at a long table with Ms. Alvarez on my right. Across the hall, my wife sat with her attorney. We were in separate rooms by design, with the mediator walking between like a careful mail carrier. He started with ground rules. No insults, no ambushes, no promises we can't keep. An hour in, my wife's attorney sent across a piece of paper nobody had warned me about. A revised will I had allegedly signed 4 years ago, leaving the house to my wife alone and a lopsided slice of retirement accounts I did not remember ever agreeing to. The paper had my name, my careless signature from some holiday party in a hurry, a notary stamp that looked a little off-center, and a witness name that made my stomach drop. The witness was my best friend. For 1 second, heat ran up my spine. I could feel the old anger knocking, not asking, just testing the latch. Then I breathed, looked at Ms. Alvarez and watched her do what she does best, separate heat from light. "Interesting," she said, calm as a Sunday crossword. "We'll need the original. We'll need the notary's log. We'll need any transmittal emails and drafts. We'll need a handwriting sample for the witness line from around that date. We'll request an ink dating analysis and print age test." She slid the page back like a dealer folding a hand that looks strong and isn't. Also, for the mediator's benefit, this notary ceased commission in March 4 years ago. This stamp says June. The mediator's eyebrows went up a notch. "We'll verify," he said, and made a note. My wife's attorney tried to float it a little longer, like a balloon losing air slowly. Perhaps he forgot signing. Ms. Alvarez put 2 certified lab reports on the table, face down, not dramatic. "Perhaps," she said, "he didn't." The mediator took the hint and moved us back to the real pieces: house equity, retirement splits, temporary arrangements. The revised will went back into their folder with a soft paper sound like a lie tripping on its own shoelace. I went home that night, tired in my bones. The smart TV was dark, the bedroom aired out, the candle gone. I made tea. I stood at the sink where the whole thing started and looked at the new bulb. It glowed the same as any other bulb, which might be the truest thing I learned. Nothing looks different until you read the fine print. The next days blurred into forms and phone calls. The best friend's wife finally left a message I did listen to. Measured, wounded, asking for facts, not rumors. I called Ms. Alvarez before I called her back. "You can tell her the shape," Ms. Alvarez said, "not the color. Dates that matter. Documents that exist. No speculation." I did exactly that. She cried once, a careful sound, and thanked me for not making it worse. My wife sent a message through counsel asking to explain. I sent one sentence back through Ms. Alvarez. Explanations are for therapists, agreements are for mediation. It wasn't cruelty, it was a road sign. We would not mix tracks. I started sleeping again in fractions. 2 hours, then 2, then 3. I woke one morning and didn't reach for the notebook first. I walked to the attic out of habit and pulled the chain on that old naked bulb. The light washed the boxes and the suitcase and the place where the carton had been. The floor looked clean where the dust had been scuffed by secrets. I stood in that warm, still space and thought about how quiet paper is until you read it aloud. You want a twist? Here's a small one. On Friday, a letter arrived addressed to me in handwriting I recognized from the red folder, the careful loops my wife uses when she tries to be formal. Inside wasn't an apology. It was a photograph. Our daughter at 5, asleep in a cardboard castle we'd made, a paper crown slipping over one eye. On the back, 2 sentences. "You were a good father. I don't know how to say anything else yet." I sat at the kitchen table with that picture and the lab reports side by side and felt something inside me choose how not to break. Ms. Alvarez called an hour later with a voice that had a small smile hidden in it. "The notary's commission dates don't match," she said, "and the witness signature has a pressure pattern inconsistent with your friend's sample from a lease he signed that year. I've requested a formal exam, but the revised will looks like a draft, someone dressed in a hurry." Outside, a delivery truck rattled past. Somewhere, a dog barked twice. The world kept doing the world's errands while mine lined up on a desk. They thought the fallout would be smoke and sirens. It turned out to be papers and locks and chairs in proper rooms. It turned out to be a father telling his daughter she stands on a floor he built to hold her, even if the blueprints have changed. It turned out to be dignity like a slow river, wearing the stone down whether anyone claps or not. There was one more room to stand in, the one where the truths stack, names on record, hands raised, dates written in black ink. That room was coming. And when the door opened, I meant to walk through it with my head up, carrying both pictures at once, the man I was and the man I had to finish this right. They thought the truth would tire out before it reached the finish line. They thought paperwork could be bent into a shield, that a forged stamp and a witness with a soft spine could tilt a future. They were wrong. Truth doesn't run fast. It runs far, and when it finally arrives, it sits down at the table and asks for names. The hearing room was small enough to hear paper breathe. Fluorescent lights, a clock that didn't dare tick loud, rows of chairs that make everyone sit up straighter than they want to. I wore the only suit I own that still fits like a promise. Miss Alvarez slid a thin stack in front of me. Our timeline, certified lab results, the phone records, and the revised will that had come dressed like a winner and turned out to be a costume. Across the aisle sat my wife, hands folded too neatly, eyes on the table. Beside her, the man who used to be my best friend stared straight ahead, mastering the art of looking at nothing. Their attorneys spoke first, all careful verbs and professional fog. Then Ms. Alvarez stood and did what she'd said she would. No theater, just light. "Your Honor," she began, "we have 2 independent certified reports confirming paternity for the son and exclusion for the daughter. We have documentary proof of a long-standing extramarital relationship. We have a purported will revision that, per the Notary Commission records, is stamped with a seal that did not exist on the date in question, and a witness signature whose pressure pattern is inconsistent with the witness's contemporaneous handwriting. We're submitting the forensic affidavit." The judge turned the pages the way a person turns a map when they already know where they're going. "So, the will?" he asked, mild as a librarian. "A nullity," Ms. Alvarez said, and let the word land. Their side tried to patch the hole with words like oversight and confusion and memory. The judge looked at the notary's log, the stamp dates, the affidavit. He looked at the envelope where the paper had slept until it woke up at mediation. He looked at me. "Mr. Carter," he said, "you've conducted yourself with restraint in a situation that rarely sees it. Let's keep it that way." We moved through the rest like people moving furniture. Slow, careful, no smashed corners. The house, mine. Not because I needed a castle, but because I needed a floor to invite my children onto without a tremor. Retirement, split fare, not punitive. Temporary support, reasonable. A boundary order, no uninvited entry, no late-night calls, no accidental drop-ins. The judge wrote dates in neat lines. Ink made a future where my voice alone would have cracked. There was a moment, small, private, when the judge spoke to the thing no paper could hold. "About your daughter," he said softly, eyes flicking to me, then to my wife. "Adults or not, children are children when it breaks. Be decent." It wasn't an order. It worked like one. We all nodded as if decency had to be seen to count. Outside, the hallway smelled like floor cleaner and old coffee. My wife approached, shoulders folded inward, voice small. I'm sorry," she said, as if the word could pull 38 years back into shape. I looked at the woman I'd loved, at the girl I'd married who still lived somewhere under her skin, and decided on the only answer that wouldn't poison me. "I believe you're sorry," I said. "I also believe the truth." Then I stepped aside. Forgiveness can be a door that opens both ways. Sometimes it's just a window you crack so the house can breathe. The man who used to be my friend started toward me, a speech loaded behind his teeth. I raised a palm. "Don't," I said. He didn't. Later, I heard his wife filed her own papers. Consequences don't need me as a messenger. They know the address. At home, the locksmith's keys turned like they'd always belonged to my hand. The bedroom was different. Fresh paint, new sheets, the window left open an inch so night air could rinse the corners. I took the old candle to the garage and put it with the things you keep only to remember what you survived. Sunday came, and with it the conversation I had timed my whole heart around. My daughter sat at the kitchen table where I'd once taught her to draw clocks with numbers too big to fit, and I told her the shape of the story. Not the details, the shape. I said there were papers that said a scientific thing about blood. I said those papers do not speak about love. I said she is my kid in every way that makes the word father mean anything. She listened, face still, eyes bright. "I want a copy," she said after a long minute. Not because she doubted me, but because she needed to hold the weight with her own hands. "And I want you there when I read it?" We set a date. We called a counselor. We made a plan that did not pretend not to hurt. A week later, on a quiet porch, we opened a folder together. She read. She cried without drama. She leaned her forehead to mine like she used to when she was small and storms were loud. "You're my dad," she said, not as a favor, but as a fact. "And I'll decide what the other word means later." Choice is a kind of healing. I didn't rush it. There were loose ends, there always are. A neighbor with curious eyes. A cousin who called to take sides and ended up talking about her tomatoes. A letter from my wife that wasn't an apology so much as a weather report. I am learning how to be honest in small rooms. I wished her well the way you wish anyone well who is finally reading the manual they should have opened years ago. One afternoon, I climbed the attic stairs with a cardboard box and found the place where everything had tilted. I pulled the chain on the naked bulb and stood in the warm dust. I had scrubbed the scuff where the first paper had slid into the sun. The floor looked ordinary again. Plywood, footprints, a scuffed suitcase. I lifted the lid of a clean, empty carton and set my copies inside. The timeline, the orders, the certified reports, the letter I wrote to myself that night. You are not here to humiliate. You are here to end the lie. I taped the box shut, wrote truth on the top in block letters, and carried it down. Not to hide, to file. You don't lock light in the attic. You put it where you can reach it when someone tries to turn you back into a question. If you're wondering whether I won, no. Not like a parade wins. Not like confetti and speeches. I won the way a house wins after a storm. The roof holds, the lights come on, and you can sleep without tasting rain. I won a Saturday morning where my son fixes the fence while I hand him nails. I won a Thursday evening where my daughter sends a text with a tiny picture of a cake she baked too long, and we laugh until the phone shakes. I won the right to stand at my own sink, under a steady bulb, and not wonder who the house belongs to. They thought the story ended in my bedroom, in candlelight and cowardice. It ended here, in daylight, in signatures, in a father and 2 grown kids learning how to say the next true thing without breaking the room. And if you've walked this far with me, thank you. If stories like this matter to you, real lives, hard truths, ordinary people with complicated hearts, subscribe, tap the like button, and tell me what struck you most in the comments. There are more stories here about simple kitchens and difficult choices, about the kind of courage that whispers instead of shouts. Stick around, we turn on a lot of lights,